Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. Magatte,
Matt,
you're back.
I am.
You're back.
I'm very happy to be back.
Yes. I had meant to watch the conversation we had, which I think was like 3 years ago or something.
Yeah,
I've lost
something like
completely sense of time since they locked me in my house, and I don't even know what decade it is anymore.
Oh boy.
But it was forever ago.
Seems
and
like it.
So much has happened. And we'll start with just announcing your new book, but I think the book itself sort of documents your own evolution, progression, war against the entire poverty industrial complex, Karl Marx and everyone else. You're going to defeat them all. And the book is called
The Heart of a Cheetah: How We've Been Lied to About African Poverty and What It Means for Human Flourishing.
So I love the cheetah as a metaphor, that it's not just a metaphor perhaps for your personal story, but for Africa itself.
Yeah.
The strength, the persistence, the potential.
Yeah.
Talk about the cheetah.
Yeah. So the cheetah, the name of the book and referring to the cheetah is really in honor of George Ayite, a Ghanaian economist whom we lost unfortunately earlier this year. And George literally changed my life. I mean, he's the reason why I'm even here talking with you and, sharing my understanding of the situation with you all. And so George Ayite, basically, the first time I met him, it was in 2007 in Tanzania, in Arusha, during TED Global. It was the first TED Global done in Africa. And I was one of the 100 TED Fellows. We were the original, TED Fellows, us, the Africans. And what we all had in common is many of us were entrepreneurs and the doers of the continent, young, obviously. And I remember this George was on stage and he was talking, and everything he was saying finally was making sense to me. Because before that, when people talk about Africa, it was always about this aid thing. Is aid good, not good? Not even not good. It was like aid. Aid was the de facto, setup for
the only
thinking.
paradigm.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So, but people like me, who, especially I was in business, and most importantly, I wanted something more for my continent. So to reduce it to aid, and even when you went to so-called economic conferences, what they were talking about was aid. How are we doing the aid? Should we do it differently? Blah, blah, blah. But that's it. But George was there, and he was deconstructing everything. He was showing how aid has not worked, not only not worked, but was keeping, bad leaders in place, just all of that. And he said, the future of Africa lies on the back of the cheetahs. These are the fast runners of Africa. It's you guys, and he's talking to us. And so he's the one who baptized us with cheetahs. And he said that the future of our continent lied on our backs. I will never forget that. And it was so refreshing. And it fits so much, the solution that I wanted for my Africa. And he said, so he compared us to the cheetahs, to the hippos. He said the hippos are these bureaucrats, these people who have been enjoying the aid and this foreign aid, government to government, aid. And he said, we were the future of Africa. And I think we heard him. In that room, we heard him. And so that's why we call ourselves the Cheetahs. He said, we are the Cheetahs. And actually, George wrote the foreword for my book. And in it, he said something that will stay with me. He said that I was his prayer come true. So, and so the book really is a way to try and continue George's work. He took a lot of errors on our behalf. And so it's about time we try to expose it. So the cheetahs, beyond that, cheetah is my favorite animal in the whole world. The cheetah is so beautiful. I don't know if you've seen one in real life. I mean, the beauty of this animal, this animal is so perfect in my mind that when you look at this animal, even if you don't believe in God, you have no choice but to believe in God, because it's such perfection. And the speed, it's the fastest animal on land, you know. And the way the cheetahs also, when you see a coalition of cheetahs, because that's what we call a group of cheetah, a coalition of cheetahs hunting, the way they hunt is just, it's just so fascinating. You'll see couple cheetahs laying around over there or free, and you would think, oh, they're just having, you know, they're just chilling, talking to each other. And then you see another one over there, like very kind of far scattered. And you don't think they're connected, right? But man, when the hunt happens, you know that each one of them is connected, because one of them starts to run, the other one picks it up at some point, and it's so coordinated. It goes super fast. But I love it because 80% of their of the hunt is in preparation, and the preparation of it seems very calm, quiet. It's like they're not even preparing, but when they go, 20% of the time is the run, and that's it. And I think it goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It's so crazy. So that's us.
Okay, we're going to just focus on the cheetah metaphor for the next hour, because this is a beautiful thing. And and I was telling you earlier, it's a joke on the show, which isn't a joke at all, that cats are very libertarian.
Very.
And you're describing, to take this metaphor just a little bit further, very individualistic. And that's the rap on cats, is that they stand alone. But you're describing cooperation, community amongst all of these radical individualists.
That's right. That's right.
And that's how the species survives. So I like this metaphor. We won't even talk about dogs, because I'm convinced they're communists.
I love dogs, but you know.
Yeah, it might be true. It might be true.
You might be onto something.
But the context of George's work, and you mentioned this in the book, and I don't know the entire history, but I would imagine at one point, as a free market economist in Africa, he literally stood alone against the Marxist intelligentsia that you go in great detail in the book.
Yes. Yeah, this is what I mean when I say that George took so many arrows. And the reason why I respect George so much is because he truly, you can tell, I mean, you have to be an independent thinker. You have to be a critical thinker to be growing up and to be at your prime time, during a time where socialism is en vogue, where everyone who is respectable is socialist, right? And this is the ideas that are running around you. And for you to be like, this makes no sense, you have to be someone who's really a critical thinker. And that's what George was. And this is where really my respect for him came from. And I said to him, I asked him, because I think I have the last interview with George. It's going to be released. We had a 2-hour conversation. But I asked him, I said, Professor, why did you start looking in a place where, you know, that went completely against the grain? What happened? He's like, because Magatte, it didn't add up. Because he's like, my lived experience and what my own eyes were seeing did not match with what that ideology is telling us. Because in his case, what he was talking about is the fact that, especially after the end of colonizations, and I always do it this way because are we truly at the end of colonizations? There is something called neo-colonization happening. But on that one, you know, just to piss off some of my African friends who love to sit there and just complain that colonization is a reason why we're still poor, and I say, no, it's not. And then they're like, well, who even said we're no longer in colonization? That's a whole nother conversation. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But anyway, George, after the end of so-called colonizations, sorry, after the end of so-called colonization, or at the end of so-called colonization, what we had was basically mostly all of these liberators of these African nations who actually have drinking the Marxist socialist ideology within the decade before.
Yeah.
You know, we're here now talking about late 50s, early 60s. That's when most of our, you know, countries gained their independences. But really, I don't have to tell you what was going on during that time. I don't have to tell you where, you know, the battle of these two ideologies between, you know, freedom using capitalism as its economic system was facing off with, you know, various forms of statism, and socialism, those two ideologies were facing off. And our people had sided with the Marxist socialists of their times because primarily they, and Lenin is the one who had been very clever in terms of building an amalgam between, slavery, capitalism, and even racism. That's when all of that started to be added together. And so our people then looked at it and said, well, the enemy of my friend, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You guys seem to be the ones who are also fighting for, against racism. And it is true. It is true. During those times, the socialists, were the ones also fighting against racism. And so I have to give it to them. And I believe that so many of them were really had the right intentions. I really do believe that. But as we all know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So we became bedfellows, literally. And so they started, and W.E.B. Du Bois played a big role in that as well. So there was this famous Congress, the Fifth Pan-African Congress, that happened in England. It was the last such Congress before independences, and they were all there. The one from my country, Kenyatta was there, all of them were there. And basically, this was like a big celebration of Marxist socialism, and that this is the way forward, and this is what we're going to do. And so this is how, sadly, many African nations started on their journey to so-called freedom, with leaders who basically had drunken the Marxist socialist Kool-Aid. And so I want to point to that fatidic moment with my fellow Africans and to anyone who cares about African and African prosperity, because the minute we went for that, we decided for the rest of our fate 60-some years later, especially because we never reconsidered that legacy. We never. To this day, we have yet to reconsider. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what the book is trying to do. The book is trying really, 80% of the book is spent on trying and getting the record straight in terms of a diagnosis. We want to make sure that we finally have a right diagnosis as to why this continent is still the poorest 60-some plus years later. And the right diagnosis, I argue, is Africa is the poorest region in the world because it happens to be the most overregulated region in the world. What that means is, if poverty is your problem, and I just said Africa is the poorest region in the world, despite its riches and its young population, average age 19 years old. It's insane. I think it's a great thing, but this is gonna backfire if we don't do the right thing of creating hundreds of millions of jobs within the next decade, right? But until further notice, as far as I'm concerned, humans are a blessing, as far as I'm concerned, for where I come from. So I'm not one of those people who say we have too many people or whatever. I believe our Earth can take care of everybody, and for me, that's not something that I want to even argue. But going back, the solution to poverty is prosperity. It's not poverty alleviation, which, by the way, is what most of the world has seemed to have settled on when it comes to Africa, because all I see is poverty, alleviation. Poverty alleviation, poverty alleviation. We only talk of poverty alleviation or poverty eradication, but I'm not interested in any of that stuff. What we should be focused on, the solution to poverty is prosperity. So I want to hear about prosperity building. And if you want to talk about prosperity building, who builds prosperity? Entrepreneurs. Last time I checked, it's entrepreneurs. And so what do entrepreneurs need? A good business environment. As with anything, if you want something to thrive, give it the right environment. And so, pure, simple, right? Well, except that when you look at that, you find that Africa is the region in the world with the most regulations when it comes to business. Basically, our nations are the ones who offer the worst business climates to their entrepreneurs in the world. Therefore, we're poor. And almost no one talks of this, Matt. No one. And so I'm sitting there thinking, if you want to solve a problem, don't you first have to get the diagnosis right? I think we do. But when it comes to the diagnosis of why is Africa poor, You could line up 100 people here, African or non-African, and you will get 100 different reasons as to why that is the case. And it's funny because in a way, I have done a little survey. You see, some of my most viral tweets or whatever has to do with, like when you ask just, why is Africa so poor? You say, you don't try to guide them or anything. Why is Africa so poor? You take a majority African, and I can point you to this because it's in the way you ask it. In the way you ask it, you'll trigger Africans or non-Africans. So what you'll see is a primarily African audience or responders, comments all over the place, but they have usual suspects. Yeah, it's racism, colonialism. They're stealing our resources. They just don't want us to thrive, because if we thrive, then they go down. There's zero-sum vision of a world. And so you hear all of that. If it's primarily white people, speaking, so if you're looking at folks more on the left in this group of non-African, especially if they happen to be maybe white, what you'll see is if they tend to be more on the left, they'll bring up the same stuff the Africans brought up, right? From racism to all of that stuff. That's what they're saying. And then if they happen to be more on the right end of the spectrum, then their usual suspects are, you guys are stupid, the IQ fury. You guys are barbarians. You guys are lazy. You guys are just over there popping too many babies for your own good. It's funny. It's so interesting. But Matt, I look at all of this nonsense because truly on both sides, I find it to be nonsense, honestly. Whether you're talking about the IQ fury or you're talking about, people saying that, white people wake up every day thinking about how they're going to mess up with black people or whatever. And now, does that mean that there are some racist people? Yeah. Does that mean that we have some stupid Africans? Yeah. But no more stupid Africans than we have stupid, Asians, or we have stupid, white people of wherever they come from. Stupidity, I like to say, is one of the best, dispersed thing in the world, among us humans. So whatever. But you see, what is so interesting is literally no one brings up. It's because it's one of the regions where it's the damnedest hardest place to do business. No one links up to the entrepreneurs and how hard they have it compared to everyone else, and it's all well reported and documented in economic freedom indexes. No one knows none of these two sides, and then you wonder why we are where we are.
Yeah.
The diagnosis is completely invisible to most people, and then of course, if it's invisible to most people, and so what they all advance is, in a way, in my mind, the symptoms of poverty. If you're going to be poor, of course it's going to be easier for people to, right now, do what we call neo-colonize you. All these things that we complain about. Yeah, France is still using our resources on the cheap end. China is doing this to us, and Russia, blah blah blah, whatever. Everybody's always doing something to us. Well, it's easy to be abused. It's easier to be abused when you're not prosperous. When you're poor, people trample on your rights. It's you see it everywhere. It doesn't make it right, but it is a fact. And so not understanding that even there again, this poverty is there. And a friend of mine, I call him a friend of mine because I feel like I know him, but he's just somebody I appreciate. Remy Adekoya, a Polish-Nigerian professor based out of the UK, but, grew up, I think he spent some time in Nigeria anyway. But he wrote this amazing book that just came out this year called It's Not About Whiteness, It's About Wealth. And he's so right. He's so right. And the book really connects it. I've always intuitively known that, but his book gives me all the ammo that I need to connect those relations. If we were no longer so darn poor, it would be a very different story, including, I will go on record with this, 80% of racism as we know it against black people will just go poof in the air.
Yeah. At Kibbe on Liberty, freedom is a lifestyle 24/7, something you live and breathe and wear every day. If that describes you, you need the very best Liberty swag in the market today, just like this shirt I happen to be wearing. Go to freethepeople.org/KOL and check out our exciting merch. You too can love liberty and look cool. You talk about the patronizing nature of these narratives, like it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault, or it's inherently built into African people. And you tell a very moving story at the beginning of the book about one of your employees who bought into it. Mm-hmm. She says, are we
inferior?
Maybe we're inferior.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't do this.
Yes. And it's so funny because I was just coming on my Uber ride over here. It was a brother of mine, from, he was from Ivory Coast. And so we were talking. And I told him, give me your number because I'm going to want to interview you, because soon I'm going to start doing some of these interviews, because it's really important for me that we really help our people go to the other side of this narrative, that we have been fed so much that it's almost part of us by now. It's almost like I wouldn't need a big electroshock for people to be like, what happened? So he was talking to me about this new company, this company that he has. It's an e-commerce type of company, and so we were talking about it. And he was even mentioning to me that when our other brothers and sisters know that he's driving an Uber, some of them are making fun of him. Being like, why are you driving an Uber? Maybe you should go get a job instead if your company is not. He's like, I'm driving an Uber so that I can make the money, so that I can put it into the marketing of my company. So he knows what he's doing, and he's giving himself the means to his ambitions. He'll do whatever it takes that's honest to get a job so he can finance the business that he's doing. So his goal is very clear. He knows he's not going to be an Uber driver forever, and there's a reason why he's doing it, so he can finance his company. When others are sitting there and be like, well, no one wants to invest in my company. I went and I tried to fundraise and no one would give me money. And you see, they're racist. That's why they're not doing it. If I was white, maybe I would get the funding. But you see how it all goes. Here's this guy, and he's like, I'm going to go drive my Uber. And we had this great talk. And then at some point he was telling me, he's like, when he started his e-commerce, one of his friends laughed and told him, in French, he told me this way. He said, in French, his African friend, probably from Ivory Coast, black like him, African, said, mais le e-commerce, c'est pour les nègres. So e-commerce is for niggers. That's what his friend told him. And he said, you see how we think of ourselves? You see how we talk of ourselves? And because there's so many things that all of a sudden it's like, white people do that. Why is it that all the good things are things that white people do? I refuse that premise. You see, when I was about to leave Senegal, my grandma told me, she said, whatever difference you're going to run into over there, remember that these are still human beings. You're a human being. Whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter how great it is, you can do the same, if not better, because you're a human being as well. Period. Done. So that's the thing. This narrative, we see it in so many things. You happen to be on time. Oh, you're so white. All of that stuff. But at the same time, we're complaining when, I don't know if you remember that Smithsonian sign a while ago, a few years ago, saying white supremacy is to be white. So you see how things start to look weird, sound weird, and it's almost like we make this crap ours eventually at some point. But I am going to fight that until the cows come home. Seriously.
It's fascinating. The same Cheetah is in the Ivory Coast. He comes to America, and he's immediately unleashed.
There you go.
This entrepreneurial.
That's right.
I can't say this French word. Entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
He's immediately thinking, I own and control my own future, mm-hmm. but it's my responsibility, mm-hmm. and I'm going to work my ass off and do that. Mm-hmm. He proves your point.
Yeah, he proved my point. But the thing is, the same Cheetah, there are things that are making it easier for him to be a cheetah when he's here than back home. Back home, we do have some cheetahs who are working really hard and making amazing lives for themselves. And I am here to support them, and I'm here to encourage them. But the point we're trying to make is wherever Cheetah came from, we have millions more.
Yeah.
And behind them, hundreds of millions of jobs. Remember, those are the jobs we need to create so that this young population of 19 years old of average, and by 2050, 1 out of every 4 people walking this earth will be African. That's who we're creating these jobs for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have, let's talk about this is not a small project you've taken on. You understand that because
Right.
you have everything that colonialism did to break Africa.
Yep.
The last vestige of colonialism, I would call it almost intellectual colonialism, which is the exportation of Marxists from
Yep.
elite French universities, the same people that taught Pol Pot
Yep.
to murder 1 in 4
murder, yeah.
of Cambodians. And now you have Poverty Inc., the poverty industrial complex, that is inherently sort of patronizing. Like, you guys can't possibly lift yourselves out of poverty. So let us,
Yeah.
it's a new form of central planning.
It really is.
In a sense. How do you break that vicious cycle? Because you're talking about generations of people being convinced that they can't possibly do for themselves.
That's right. That's right. You see, Matt, I have a philosophy in life because I'm a warrior, obviously. And when you're a warrior, you have to use strategy. And I think trying to use all of your energy to push against something, it's a losing proposition. So instead, I prefer to use what they call gravity, And the way I do that is it's a very simple way. It's what I call this concept of the island of excellence. Build it, make your point. Show, don't tell. Obviously, I'm doing a lot of telling because I do think there are people, because the reason why I'm doing a lot of telling is because I am also putting a stake in the ground with bright lights on, broadcasting a message. What I'm doing right now, and that's why this book is here, and that's why over the last year I started becoming serious about, really taking the gospel out there as to what the right diagnosis as to why this continent is the poorest in the world, and 20% of the book being spent on solutions. I am broadcasting big time now because what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that the 1 to 5% of the people that are ready for this journey find me, and that I find them. That's the only people I'm looking for. You see, when people think about some major problem and they're like, how do I start? Well, you start at step number 1. In this case, for me, step number 1 is put your stake on the ground, put the fury down on the ground, and broadcast it as wide as possible. Because I want the person who is even on the other end of the world, I don't care what that person looks like, whether they're African, non-African, whatever they are, but they truly care about Africa. If nothing else, they care about a better world, and knowing that a better world can only work if everyone in that world is doing better. You cannot be doing great in Japan and people are doing poorly in Africa and think you're going to be fine forever because you're so far away. No, it's going to get to your shores. We are in a global village, okay? So anyway, I'm broadcasting it wide so that 1 to 5% of the people can find me. And why do I say 1 to 5%? Because study shows that it takes only 1 to 5% of a population to change the world for good or for bad. It's very scary, but it's also super promising. Scary because, it takes a few people to get us to Nazi world, but just like it takes us to a few people to get us to the end of slavery or end World War II, right? I just when I say to end World War II and saying 1 to 5%, it's the people who are thinking in their mind, there's got to be a way to fight this off, not like the amount of people that had to go and fight, because that's a big number. But the people who say, we believe in this idea. We believe that this idea, is right, and we need to work on it. Ideas matter, but it's only few people who latch onto an idea.
Like George, somebody has to go first.
Yeah, somebody has to go first.
Somebody has to go
exactly.
first.
So that's what I look for. I'm looking for those people. We're trying to find each other.
Yeah.
And then when we find each other, we get to work on what I call the island of excellence. So Oops, sorry. So in this case, what we do is the creation of startup cities. These are basically next generation special economic zones that happen to offer the best business environments that are. We're talking here about business environments that are as good, if not better, than Singapore or Denmark. So what
strip away the regulations, the
exactly.
taxes, the land use, all of those barriers.
All of these barriers. So the way we think about the business environment, so these zones have their own law and governance when it comes to commercial law. When it comes to commercial law, you basically are just saying, if this land is where it is right now, because it happens to provide the worst business environments to its creators, to its prosperity builders, then we need to find a solution. And when you look at law and governance, all of that, the best way to describe it to people who might be listening to us is think about it as your country as a computer or like a microphone or whatever, and then think about the laws that rule it as your operating software. And we all know there are some operating software that just suck and others that just like, you're on. So this is technology. It's the best way to think about it is technology, and don't think about it as something like a political battle, because then it's just nonsense. It never ends. But because I would like to think that all of us could agree that no one wants to be running on bad technology, on a bad software. I know no one who's telling me, I don't want the latest software. I don't want the most, efficient software. Everybody wants it. And that's really what the law really truly is at the end of the day. But now when you're in a country that has been running on this bad technology for so long, but running that bad technology, you always have people who get to win from that bad technology. In this case, we call them, these are the cronies, right? Mm-hmm. The people who are, the government and the people who they're friends with. So think about the cronies. I know somebody in government, whatever, so I get a special deal. I get all the public markets that are coming in, and because my uncle is a minister of this, or my girlfriend is the sister of this minister or that president or whatever, you get all the deals. And also, all of a sudden, they're seeing it right now. I think it's in Zimbabwe, where all of a sudden many public transportation have been outlawed. And why? When you trace it back, straight back to whom? To some minister. It turns out this works for them because, hey, they have a bus company, and they want it to be now the new law that you can't use anything else but this thing. Who benefits directly? You see, that's crony. That's not business right there. This is crony.
By the way, it's kind of socialism in practice, because the ideal is impossible and unworkable. So what happens is that the people in power just feed off of the rest.
Exactly.
Everybody else.
Exactly. So that's what you have. So when you've been running on a bad software for so long, you always find a few people who actually benefit from the status quo. They have this interest that if you want to take it out, you're going to have to go to war with them. And even if you have a president or somebody within the government who is willing to change things, it's a lot of forces to fight. And it's very muddy, very murky. If I was any of his president, I would be like, well, I hear it. I would like to do something different, but it's hard.
I can't take them on.
That's why the zone is great. These zones are great because what you're doing is you're saying, we're not gonna mess up. We're not gonna challenge the current status quo because it's too many things to fight, including the people. Sometimes these citizens are just like, it's the weirdest thing about humans.
They believe it's the only way it can be.
Yes. Yeah. It's the weirdest thing about humans. But the thing is, my job is not to go to war and use all my strength to push against that.
Yeah.
Instead, you have this zone where you're not bothering anybody. There is really literally, most of the time, there's nothing going on there. It's a rather barren plot of land. People have decided there's nothing worthy there. That's why they're primarily not there. And you see that all over the continent, people being in the big capital cities or the antenna cities around them. And then the countryside is more or less empty, oftentimes, because there's nothing there. So there, though, you work with the government. And the government saying, here, we're gonna give you autonomy especially when it comes to the regulatory system that we're going to use so that you can have autonomy in commercial law, so that you can put in place the best business environment. And from that place, talent and money is always attracted to the right environment. Then you watch people come. You watch, the entrepreneurs come. Investors following them. They're creating jobs. And before you know it, there is a thriving economy over there that technically took nothing away from the rest of the country and the other oligarchs. They can continue doing whatever they're doing. We're not taking public, we're not winning public offer, anything like that. And eventually at some point what they're seeing is not only we didn't challenge them on anything, but on top of that, we actually even become a bigger market for them. Now they can also sell to people here because there's people here, they're making money, all of that stuff. So they're growing their market. And eventually, in interacting with us, they're starting to find, it is so much easier to do business over here than the crazy way we have to do it here. Because here, I might be benefiting from my friend in government, but guess what? I'm his slave, which is true. I mean, I don't have to. We know what happens to all the oligarchs in Russia that don't do, what the Russian president wants them to do. All of a sudden, their money disappears. They're on call. They have to. They're walking on eggs all the time.
It's a lot of slip and falls out of windows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Slipping falls on windows, especially lately it's the windows, right?
Yeah.
And so, without going so extreme on our side, but still, you're never free.
Right.
You're never free. You can't say what you need to say. You can't stand for what you need to stand for. These are human beings too. They're just doing with what they have.
You don't own your own future.
They don't own their own future. So all of a sudden they're seeing here, oh my God, I can actually still make my money, make it in a way that's safe and, secure for myself, and not to have to respond to anybody, but just to the market. And eventually them too gradually start to change. And this is, you see how from that little island of excellence, eventually it will radiate out back. Because I believe in build something great and let the people who want to go for it, go for it. And eventually that's how I think the change is going to start to happen. And all over the sudden on the continent, voila, we have turned the corner.
Yeah.
And this can be done in our lifetime. I can see this. If God grants me a few more decades and we get to work right now, which we are, we can see Africa become prosperous in our lifetime.
So the experiment in this goes all the way back to your first business venture in Senegal. And you were born in Senegal. You eventually moved to France, and
Germany, France, and then
Germany,
the U.S.
And the U.S. Tell a little bit of that story, because I have to say your personal story, and particularly your obstinance and stubbornness, and running with the boys instead of playing a traditional role as a little girl. It reminds me a little bit of Dagny Taggart. From Atlas Shrugged, because she also was playing with trains instead of dolls, and she wanted to build something. Give people some of that background, because like starting a business and then thinking about an autonomous economic zone and then thinking about a free Africa, that there's a logic to this.
Right. I think that for me, and this is why I will always encourage parents. I'm very much for. That's why I love the the school choice movement going on in the U.S. right now. I was blessed, and when I say this, I anger some people as well. When I say I was blessed to not go to school when I was a little girl, it's like, how can you say that? Everybody's fighting so that kids can have access to education, blah blah blah. I'm like, define education. Define education. So is education you go sit on a chair and listen to some person because they happen to be an adult, just telling you things that you're just repeating back and forth, and putting stuff on a piece of paper that you most of the time don't even understand what's going on.
Cinder block prisons where they indoctrinate
right?
you.
Where you indoctrinate them.
Yeah.
My grandma instead was, I did not want to go. So basically right after.
Thank you for joining me today on Kibbe on Liberty, and for being part of our fiercely independent audience. Every week, my organization, Free the People, partners with BlazeTV to bring you this show. My guests bring smart perspectives on everything from current events to timeless philosophical debates. If you like what you hear, go to freethepeople.org/KOL and support Kibbe on Liberty so we can continue to produce these honest conversations with interesting people. Now, let's get back to it.
When I was born, right after breastfeeding me, my parents made the decision and journey that so many African parents have made before them and so many have made after them. Some get to emigrate under, safe circumstances like there were, and some don't. Many don't. As a matter of fact, today, every single day, this morning, every day I talk to you, I can tell you that a boat, because in this case, many people in Senegal, but it's really across the continent, whether they're going looking for work outside of a continent or outside of their borders, but within the rest of the continent, because there's a lot of migration going on also within the continent, and the problems are everywhere the same. So my parents made the decision that they were going to emigrate to secure us a better life, and in this case, it meant just better jobs, And so they were lucky that they emigrated under safe circumstances, and they decided, though, not to take me with them because, it was highly adventurous. They didn't know what they were going to find on the other side, if it was going to work, not work. So keep me stable and only move me when things are secure on the other end. So they went, and eventually things became secure for them, and they called for me. But in between, I was left home in Senegal to be raised by my grandma, and clearly I did not want to go to school. I grew up in a family compound.
We call this free range now.
Yeah, I was a free range kid, really.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in a family compound. Everybody around the village, knows me. I know them, whatever, and we're like, I'm surrounded by family members anyway, and the friends of the family. And so, yeah, in the morning, I'm like, I did not want to go to school. So my grandma didn't bother trying to send me to school or whatever. So what I was doing is pretty much hanging out all day long, hanging out with, and my little group was a pack of boys. And my whole life has always been like that. I mean, don't take me wrong. I do have friends that are ladies, but my comfort place has always been with men, with boys, with men. Even to this day, when you come to Senegal, when I'm building, we finished building our factory maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm there. I don't think there's one of the contractors or anyone involved in the building that was being a woman. The only time I found a woman, and I was so excited, is when it came down to electricity, and then it was a guy who came with his team. But I was so excited to see that one of his right hands was a lady, and I was like, oh. So anyway, but the bottom line is, here I was and bossing all of these people, and people back home saying, "What are you doing to these people?" Because even us can't get them to work so fast. I mean, they were still slacking off. We all know contractors around the world. Contractors have a reputation, but still they were going much faster than people were used to. And they're like, "What are you doing to them?" And I don't know. I just feel like maybe I don't know. It's easier for me to speak to men oftentimes than it is to women, and without making generalities, I just appreciate the fact that I can speak very directly and not have to whatever. That part is another conversation that I think would be interesting about why I've always been, it seems like I don't have a problem. It's not that I prefer, but it seems like I don't have a problem working with men when so many women seem to have.
I think you were breaking rules is what you were doing.
I don't know. So there it was. Every morning they come, and then the thing was, okay, I have this little pack of boys, and then so-and-so wants to go fishing, because our fishing really was, we take the buckets and we go to the shore, which is like a block away from my family home, and a few blocks away. And then there, what happens is, the fishermen are coming back in their little fishermen's boats, and we're pretty much going from boat to boat, kind of begging and annoying people to get a fish in a bucket. So they would give us a fish that maybe got a little bit smashed or whatever, all of that stuff, or like stuff that whatever. And then, that was fishing for us. So we go and we get this stuff, but then, then we would, once our little bucket had enough in it, we go up, because the water is right here. Then we go a little bit more, like towards back towards the village, and there we find a little spot. We start to make a fire, and then we ask one of the ladies who takes off the scales from the fish to take it off for us and take out the head or whatever. And then we go there and we do a little, we put it on the grill. We do a little thing, and then my grandma gives me like some onion sauce, and then there we are. We have a nice meal. Then we go swim. Then we go sleep on the side. That was our fish. So sometimes they come and they're like, so and so wants to go fishing. But so-and-so is like, no, I want to go play soccer, on the soccer field, but was across the street. Or so-and-so is like, I want to go do the slingshot. We were like, great slingshot. I mean, especially me, but until I had this accident where the bullet went to hit a branch and then came straight back hitting me here. I fell off, all fours up in the air. My friends laughing their asses off. I was like, okay, I'm done with this stuff. We're no longer doing slingshots. But you see, that's the thing. I was a little bit of an authoritarian though, because when I decided no more slingshot for me, we couldn't do slingshots anymore. It's like, this is over. We're done. But anyway, so when you have people showing up in the morning and you have few like subgroups wanting to do different things, yet we're not going to separate. We're going to have to find a way to take everybody in the same direction, not like kicking and screaming, but feeling like it's their decision. That was a little art, that I think I did pretty well. So you
learned leadership at 6 years old.
We kept the clan. Yeah, we kept the clan safe. Everybody was always, by the time we got there, everybody was excited. We were having great days. And, of course, sometimes there's little arguments. And then how do you solve it without necessarily getting the adults involved? So we were doing our own thing. One day I got a big burn on the back of my thigh. Yeah, another day I had a big cut at the bottom of my heel on the right foot. Things were happening all the time. And my grandma was not freaking out about any of this stuff. It's like, well, I guess it didn't kill you, so he's going to be stronger, right? But I never thought about it that way. And so when I arrived in Germany, so this is pretty much the background for me. And I really think it definitely set the rest of the stage for the rest of my life. And also the fact that my grandma was very much, she and I had conversations. I would get in trouble. And she would always take my side in public. But in private, we got to talk about this. What happened over there? And I learned, you tell her the truth. And then we would have to talk about it. And sometimes she would be like, well, I'm glad you did that. And sometimes she'd be like, well, that was wrong. And really, I would like for you to think about it. And it's just, not. So she would give me like a little lesson. And sometimes we just agree that, yeah, you think that and I think that and whatever. We'll see. We'll check it out next time. But, but all of this was being done without me ever saying, no, grandma, you're lying or that's not true. See, those things, those words were not part of my vocabulary with her. Yet I was very like, this is what I think. So this idea, and I think this is a problem because too often people think that irreverence has to mean disrespect. The two can happen. You can stand for what you stand for and without certain behavior. And I think the Western world has a big problem with that. When I look at how American kids, especially because this is who I'm seeing, are raised for the most part, I am often appalled. Not everybody's like that, obviously, but a lot of what I'm seeing, it's just appalling. And obviously, and then I've seen a little bit of a ranking. French, European kids in general, I find them to be a little bit more better behaved than American. I think American kids are definitely at the complete end of the spectrum when it comes to respect towards the elders and just respect in general. I don't know. At the same time, I'm sitting here wondering, okay, how much does that have to do with the fact that they're also highly innovative people? Is it part of it? Is it the future or a bug? But I'm still gonna go with, I think it's a future, but the future doesn't have to be so nasty.
Yeah. Instead of being just against things like this whole process of entrepreneurship that you read in the book, it's about constantly breaking rules, but also persuading people. Like
exactly.
You don't get to just insult other people and succeed. You have to learn that skill. I wonder. I love to blame our government schools for all sorts of behavioral destruction, and I'm sure that that's part of the problem. And even in our woke culture, there's an inability to disagree and work things out anymore. And that's not allowed to say certain things.
No, but that's what I was going back to earlier when I was saying that my grandma was not getting involved in our arguments. And later, with my parents, same thing. You know, my sisters and I, sometimes we get into these big arguments, but it's just like, it's almost like if you go and try to complain to the parents, both of you are punished. Yeah. It's like both of you. We're not taking sides. Both of you. Next time, you fix it among yourselves. Now, of course, if things are really outrageously bad or dangerous, then, of course, you can get them involved. But I think it's important to try to let kids work things out among themselves.
Yeah.
And they'll learn very quickly, that you don't catch flies with vinegar. And you know what I mean? That you have to make things work, and that you can stand for your rights, but it doesn't mean that you're going to burn all types of bridges, because then wants to be ostracized, or you have to accept. Maybe sometimes you have certain behaviors, others are going to break from you, but you own it. So I think a lot of it goes back to that. I see kids who are not able to sort things out, and even hearing something not nice. It's now hearing something not nice or being told something nice, that in itself is violence.
Right. So, like, you know Lenore Skenazy?
Yeah, I know of her story.
The free range mom. She's been on the show as well. But I'm linking this story of your free range years when you were breaking things and burning things,
including myself.
Yes. And fast forward all the way to you make it to Silicon Valley.
Yes.
In your 20s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not easy to do, but I think I think there's a defense of letting kids learn how to move forward, and your path not only to Silicon Valley, but since then it's like fail, succeed, fail, succeed.
Yeah.
And that's like, helicopter parents don't let their kids fail.
Yeah, they don't.
And at this, we could be like destroying this entrepreneurial nature that I do think I see has always been part of American culture. Mm-hmm. And I worry that that's going away. But maybe Africa has to step up and save us from ourselves.
And that's the other theory that I have. Once again, at some point, Africa is going to come for the rescue. I think American kids, and it's terrible for me to talk like this because it's not all American kids, but there is definitely a big subset of the American youth population. The ones we're surrounded with, we're very blessed with. And I say surrounded with because, Michael, my husband, and I, we haven't, it's more his project, but, I support him in everything and he supports me in everything. It's called the Socratic Experience. And here is very much the place where everything is based on agency and, this concept of learning through doing and also asking questions. So they use the Socratic method. That's why the Socratic Experience. Actually, one of his students, 16 years old, just, raised $1.2 million in venture financing. I mean, and others have like customers already. Like this is one kid, he figured what he did is he looks at all of his influencers on YouTube, right? And then he's thinking, okay, you have all of these musicians, but they have a problem because they don't have an audience. These influencers have an audience, and a lot of them actually would love to be musicians. Why not create music for them? They already have the audience. I mean, this kid already has, customers. He's flying around LA. This is another one. So I'm looking at all of this and I'm like, oh my God. So this is what's possible. And they give me hope in the future of American kids. But I think parents really, it's time for parents to wake up. This is what's going on is very scary. So what I have seen with so many of the, I'm not even sure. I think I lost my thought here. But I think what I'm trying to say is Yes, I agree with you that the helicopter parenting is probably going to cost us. And this is where I think African kids, this is where I was going, African kids are
Yeah.
going to eat this lunch.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in a zero-sum game. So all I'm going to say is maybe we'll give them the little spark.
Well, I think
that they
so.
need back.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot. I think that the reason that we don't believe so much in personal responsibility and liberty and productivity and entrepreneurship in this country is that we're kind of victims of our own success. And we are so fat and happy, and we're so rich. Yeah. And I think we've let the institutional structures that allowed for that.
That's right.
So I think it's fixable.
Yes.
The same way that Africa is fixable, and it's not a problem with the kids.
No.
It's not a problem with where we're born or the color
the
of our
environment.
skin.
I blame, even with the kids, I blame the environment. Yeah. Because if you have an environment that doesn't allow you to test and fail and burn yourself. I mean, I know it's not ideal, but if you don't have an environment in which you can really push yourself, test yourself, explore, figure things out, learn that it's actually easier it's better to collaborate with people than it is to make everybody upset and mad at you. You're going to learn those lessons, and actually very quickly. Kids are amazing. Kids are amazing when they put their minds to something, but we got to give them the environment to do that. So again, I go back to the environment. So when I say kids this, kids that, really what I should say is the environment that the kids are being put in.
Yeah.
And so that's also where the hope is. And I think a lot of educators now are getting onto this bandwagon, including the one for, the Socratic experience. But the more, and that's why the school choice movement, I have welcomed it with such, warmth and excitement, because I think this is about putting the right environment around kids so that, they can be the amazing people that they were born like. Because I believe all the kids are born, with just everything that they need.
Yeah.
Each one of them can be different, but each one of them came with what they need. And if the environment allows them to make the most of their, themselves, it's going to happen as well.
I want to go back to a story that you touched on in your personal story, but the question of migration and immigration, and in this country, the question of illegal immigration coming across our southern border is a politically divisive, destructive issue. Everybody has a position. Same thing's happening in Africa, and your family did the extraordinary thing. They left you behind because they couldn't figure out a way to keep you fed where they were, and they had to go somewhere else where they could find jobs and prosperity. Nobody wants to do that.
Nope.
But that's a problem in Africa and Europe, far bigger than our problem.
Yeah.
If you made it this far into the show, it means I must be doing something right. Kibbe on Liberty is just one of the amazing products we created for the people. We tell emotionally compelling stories and produce educational videos for the liberty curious. Our award-winning documentaries personalize all things liberty, independence, creativity, hard work, integrity, and perseverance. After the show, check out our work at freethepeople.org. And if you like what you see, donate to support what we do. That's freethepeople.org. Now back to the show.
Oh, yeah. Just 2 days ago, yesterday Sunday. Yeah, so it's Saturday morning, I think it was. Yesterday was Saturday morning. I posted, I hesitate posting these things, but I think it's important. I posted about this little island on the southern tip of Italy called Lampedusa. Lampedusa, the waters around that island is basically the graveyard to so many African people. In 2003 already, in 2013 already, there's a town in Senegal called Thiaroye-sur-Mer, and half of the young men, especially of the village, gone. put themselves into boats, tried to cross over, and they died right around there, Lampedusa. It was such a big tragedy that even the Queen of Spain, many people like that, made it to Lampedusa to actually do a symbolic burial, because there was nobody, obviously, because they were in the ocean. But yeah, that was in 2014. This past week, Lampedusa again. They talked about this just because this one was another major one, but every month or so, it's just people are coming. And basically, it's an island of 6,000 or 7,000 people normally, and I think they got more people from Africa that came all at once than there are people on the island. And so they're freaking out. Everybody's freaking out. So much that von der Leyen, the EU big chief, came down to have a joint conference with Giorgia Meloni, PM of Italy, to kind of, because the Italians are freaking out. And they also know that the EU knows that unless they do something about this, that they had to show their face on this, because the EU is at risk right now. Why is the EU at risk? Is because they're soon going for parliamentary, elections, and it does look like the diverse rights of the different country member countries are probably going to win. And when they win, some of them are probably maybe going to work on really cracking down seriously the immigration rules of the EU, if they stay within the EU, or maybe start to say that immigration is no longer something that the EU has a supervision on behalf of a member country. So meaning that from now on, each country is going to have its own, going back to having its own immigration rules, and not have to respond to the EU in terms of what are the rules. So something is going to change. But the EU, as it has the grip on immigration regulations and laws in the region, is going to change. And so that's, I believe, the only reason why von der Leyen showed her face. I'm sure of it. Now, the thing is, you see, so that's happening there. You have in Gran Canary Islands, many boats. Basically, me, every single day now, every single day. And this is new, because it used to be every month or so that I would hear about this, which was already bad. But now it's every single day in my own Senegalese news. And I bet you it's the same in Ivory Coast, you're seeing people who are basically, there's a story of a boat that has been rescued, or something bad happened, people are died, or they got, the smugglers got arrested, and this many people were on the boat. Every day now, it is accelerating. So what I'm seeing with that is, and then in Europe, so what you're having now is the governments of Europe are radically, like the face of government is changing. I do believe that Marine Le Pen in France, who is the far right, is probably going to be elected at some point president of France. The party of Zemmour is making very good progress as well. So it's
because of this.
Because of this.
Because of the disruption of migration.
Disruption of migration. In the US, as you said, we have, this country is so polarized, and immigration is definitely a big, big polarizing topic and issue. Now, here I am. And it's not just, by the way, Europe or in America. Within Africa, there's a BBC clip BBC Africa clip that's making the round in Black Twitter right now, in Africa Twitter. South Africans are racist. So basically, you have this organization called Dudula, or maybe I'm not getting the name right, something called Dudula, and basically it's an organization that up till now, it's basically an organization that cracks down on foreigners. But the foreigners are very specific. They're other African foreigners. So black South Africans who are cracking down on other black Africans because they're foreigners, and they put all the ills of their country on these people. when you have,
And South Africa, at least, has been relatively prosperous compared to the surrounding countries.
And that's why people also trying to go there.
They're
So
going where they think
they're going where they think they're going to get something.
Yeah.
Or they're going to some of those northern African nations that are also doing better than most sub-Saharan African nations, than many sub-Saharan African nations.
Yeah.
So when Senegalese, for example, this has been in the news recently, even the Tunisian government basically calling us horrible names and saying that we need to be kicked out, and actually Tunisia effectively pushing our people away into the desert.
Yeah.
So basically they catch us and they release us in the desert. This is the story right now that's happening. So, to come back to the US or to come back to the EU. But maybe I'll just stick to the US for now. But I have the same problem with the EU. I look at these politicians, whether they're from the right or from the left, and I am disappointed, to say the least. I say, none of you truly cares about us the immigrants. And in this case, I'm talking about the immigrants that are the ones that are on the other side of the wall, if it's in the US, and other side of the Lampedusa wall also they have in that on this Italian island. You guys, really, you all talk about us, the migrants, and you go to war. But none of you truly cares. And let's face it, what we are for you, we're peons. We're peons, we're political peons.
Pawns and...
Pawns. Is it pawns you say? Okay.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's English only my fourth language. So what I mean is you're political pawns.
English is almost my first language, so
yes.
You're doing fine.
Okay, thank you. No, but we are your political pawns.
Right.
The migrants are your political pawns.
I think about this. I want to ask you if this is true in Europe, because I think it's the same thing. Because I see two caricatures, and this just played out in New York City with our illustrious mayor there, who said that he was a sanctuary city, and the Democratic Party, the left, says that they care about immigrants, but they don't care about immigrants at all. They want the political points, and they want to control their vote when they get to the United States. And this gets to your solution, because I think you have the only real solution to this problem. And too many Republicans think that you can build a wall and stop people from coming to America to work. And none of them are actually asking the question. And by the way, Mexico is also trying to stop the flow in its southern border.
Yeah, in its southern border.
It's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
The question is,
why?
How do we make it so that people want to stay home? Because they do.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, so the reason why I say that we are the political pawns, and I'm gonna even say it exactly the way I see it. We are the political currency. We are a currency. Us, the migrants, are a currency for both sides of a political spectrum. And the reason why I say that is because none of them truly cares about us. Why do I say that? Because the people who say, let's build the wall, I mean, I know what you think already. That's fine. At least you're not telling me that you care about me. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty. Stay away. But then you have the other side. The side that says, we open our doors, like this mayor you're talking about. And Senator Warren, and I have a message for her when I'm done here. They say, "Oh, we're a sanctuary city. We want you guys to come in." You don't care about me either. Because just like when I asked, why is Africa so poor? And I have the two factions, non-Africans and Africans, they come up with all types of reasons, but no one pointing to the real root cause, which is the lack of economic freedom, which effectively prevents entrepreneurs from creating the prosperity and the jobs. Here, I hear no one focusing on to truly care about these people is to know especially here, I'm talking about the mid to long term, is to know that at the end of the day, given a choice, and that's a key word here, given a choice, most of these people would never want to do this. Given a choice, none of them would put their children under these extreme conditions. I can't even begin to imagine, and Lord knows, I have been on the other end of the phone, sometimes and the whole night, talking to a mom who is about to get into a boat with her baby, and me trying to talk her out of it. Or a young guy to whom I've been talking to for every time I go back to Senegal. He lives in the village where we are, and he keeps telling me, he's like, Magatte, you need to help me migrate. But I know what's going to happen to him. But what they tell you is heartbreaking, because they said, that's better than the conditions we're in here. And who can blame them? So it takes something extraordinary for people to, especially as a group, to uproot themselves from their land, their community, their homes, their families. It's crazy. And especially doing it in a way that you have high chances of not making it to the other side. Or worse yet, sending your child with someone because in your mind you're saving them from whatever it is that they're leaving behind. So shouldn't we ask ourselves, what the heck is going on over there? Why is it that they're all trying to leave? And what can be done about it? I see none of them doing it. And this is a problem. And worse yet, not only don't I see them doing it, especially the people who claim to care, but on top of that, when we are doing the work of bettering our circumstances, who do I see showing up with their out-of-touch attitude and completely rotten thinking because they're stuck in ideology, and they claim they're doing this in the name of people, but they're really doing what they're doing in the name of ideology? Because if it was not ideology, then I would think that they would have changed their thoughts. And who am I talking about here? I'm talking about Elizabeth Warren. Why do I have a problem with this woman right now? Right now. Because in Honduras, there is a place where people have set up one of these zones we're talking about. It's called Prosper. What they have done is put in place an environment where the business environment is better than Singapore. PricewaterhouseCoopers measured this. Which means this is a place where Hondurans can do business. This is a place where Hondurans can get better job so that they don't have to be part of these caravans that are on their way to the US for a better life. They can stay home, build a life, grow their communities, and keep their dignity and their pride and their lives, I would say. Do you know what Elizabeth Warren is doing right now? She signed a letter saying that she's siding with the government of Honduras in de facto trying to expropriate everyone at Prosper, all the businesses that are there, everything. And all of this was signed, their contracts. And the people who are in Prospera, you can go there. The Hondurans working there, very happy to be there. But Elizabeth Warren goes in cahoot with the government, and this is why I make the differentiation here. I'm not saying the Hondurans, I'm saying the government of Honduras. And this is where I would like to really challenge people like her in thinking again. It is not because you supposedly are supporting some of these governments of ours in supposedly what they think is right. Because if the situation has showed anything, it has showed that many of these governments all over the continent in Africa, oftentimes one of the culprits that come up when you ask people why we're so poor, they say, our leaders are bad. They're bad leaders. They don't care about us. They don't have our best interests in mind. Yet, this is who the US government tries to back. What about what's best for the ordinary Honduran? What about what's best for the ordinary Senegalese? What's best for the ordinary Ivory Coast person? She needs to be very careful. History will not be gentle on her. And so right now, what she's supporting is not in the best interest of the ordinary Honduran. And it's too easy for her to say, oh, we're just, because we're not imperialist, we have to respect what the Honduran government, wants, in this case, expropriate people. So she's doing two things when she's doing this. It's too easy for you to hide behind the fact that you are supposedly supporting, in this case, the Honduran government with what they want. Because oftentimes we know what the government wants is not in line with what the ordinary people want. But she always claimed that she's there for the people. This is very strange. Number two, what type of precedent are you setting up when you do not respect property rights? Because that's what you're doing when you're expropriating somebody, even though a contract exists. What type of precedent are you creating? And do you know, most importantly, what it's going to mean for Hondurans? Because if I'm an investor next time trying to do business in Honduras, do you really think I'm going to set up my business in Honduras, knowing that anytime a government shows up, whatever it is that they believe in, they're just going to expropriate me? And the US says, yeah, we think it's right. No, I think what's going on here is she's doing all of this because of ideology. And you see, that's my problem. If this government was probably in favor of business and everything, you probably would never have seen her over there, like saying we're siding with them. So you see, Matt, my problem is they say they care about us. They care about people, us the people. They don't care about us the people. They care about their ideology. And whatever or whoever supports their ideology is what they're going to go for, even if it means the people die in the process. So what does Elizabeth Warren want from us? What does she want from us? We're trying to do the right thing in our countries, and she comes and tries to destroy it. And then, if we can't do that back home, we're going to try to come to a place where we can have a life. But then when we come here, at first they say, oh, come in. And then they're like, oh, you're invading us. Like, the mayor in New York City. So, I'm going to try to be gentle with her, but I really want to know, what does she want from us? And who is she working? What is she working for? It has to be clear. It really has to be clear. I will have more respect for her if she said, this ideology is what I believe in. And it's just the way it is. And I understand some people are very much into the ideology. But she cannot use us, the people, in this case migrants, real people, flesh and bone people, to serve her deadly ideology, because it's really a deadly one. So that's what I had to say to her. And it's still time for her to rethink. It's still time for her to do the right thing. I'm not holding my breath, but I really would like for her to reconsider this.
I did not realize she signed that letter. And I have to say, for context, for people that don't know, the Honduran government just elected a guy that's essentially a Marxist.
A woman, yeah.
A woman. So women can be Marxists too, I
think
guess.
Yeah.
But so this gets to the fact is it's ideology, but it's also political power.
I told you we're political currency.
They're viewing migrants as political currency, and she'd rather have that power. I'm afraid it's more cynical than some gauzy Marxist ideology that she thinks is the right thing to do. And this is why I want to tease this out, because for anybody that cares about people and understands the basic economics of why people would leave everything behind, the solution is not more walls. The solution is not sanctuary cities. The solution is, let's focus a little bit on on helping those countries escape socialism, I think in Honduras, a big part of it is the war on drugs. That is our fault and responsibility. But you're offering the magic key to everything, which is freedom. It's not that hard.
And when it comes to even Honduras, although Honduras, capital murder of the world, because that's how it's known, Prospera still set shop there and still attracting companies, jobs. I mean, so even there, even in the face of violence, it is proven that if you can put businesses in place, things are not going to happen overnight, but that's definitely the pathway. And so this is what I mean. So for me, even let's just remove ideology aside, because sometimes I think people get caught up in socialism is bad, capitalism is good. Let's just remove this and let's try to go again to where I think no decent person would argue. Do you believe or not that entrepreneurship is a good thing? That people should be able to start and build businesses? For the most part, 80% of businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises. So I'm not even talking about the multinationals that too can become muddy for some people. But just stay with me. Small, medium-sized enterprises, which is in any solid, viable economy, they're the backbone of the economy. We're talking about your baker. We're talking about the lady who is making natural organic skincare products. We're talking about a school, a little private school. We're talking about, a hospital. We're talking about a printing shop. We're talking about, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a beverage company. That's what we're talking about. And together, all of these companies are creating all of these jobs, supporting all of these communities, and life is happening and people are thriving. Do we or do we not agree that it should only be fair and right for people to be able to start and run such businesses? And if you say yes, which I think most people will say yes to, then we have a problem, and that's where we need to start. Period. And she is saying no to that. That's it. Remove the word socialism, remove capitalism. All I'm talking about is, do you believe it should be as easy for any entrepreneur in Honduras or any entrepreneur in Africa to start and run a business as easy it is for any entrepreneur in anywhere in, say, Scandinavia? Do you believe those two people should have the same right? Do you believe that the African entrepreneur should be so as easy for them to start a business than it is for the Scandinavian entrepreneur? And if you tell me yes, then we've got big work to do, because it is not the case right now. You want to talk about inequality? That's an inequality that's been killing us, literally killing us. And she's saying no to that, because that's all Prospera did. Saying, we are going to make sure you get the best operating software. You get the same, if not better, operating software than the people in Scandinavia have. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Unless you don't understand what the heck is going on, and then actually you should then stay away from us. Because not only you don't get it, but you're actually taking active steps that are really going to be bad for us. But the everyday Hondurans have no idea what's going on, and how maybe, if they succeed at this, Mrs. Warren, Elizabeth Warren, is condemning them for generations to come. Because if this goes through, entrepreneurs and investors around the world are looking. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. And if it happens, they'll say, well, Honduras is not a good bet. We should not put our money there. We should not start a business there. And Hondurans themselves will say that. I should not start a business here because I will be expropriated at any moment. And it seems like you have crazy people in the US who support this. this is not even good for the U.S. This goes against everything we believe in terms of a contract is a contract. Property rights is important, is vital. Rule of law, all of that. We basically, once again, they're speaking on both sides of a mouth. Rule of law, property rights, all we want, and then this. So I will leave it to that. But again, my message for her is, it is still time to do the right thing. I don't know what motivates her to do this. I'm going to be generous with what I think motivates her, but maybe not. I'm not going to be generous. But so I needed to say this because it's been weighing on my heart. Because they're always, and see, this is another thing, Matt. The reason why, in a way, I'm more like a libertarian is because what I found is, you see, the left promotes policies but keep me poor. And then the right laughs at me because I'm poor. And none of them cares. And that's the problem.
That's a perfect way to close this conversation.
Yeah.
I wish you would get fired up about this. Get a little passion in your voice.
No, but Elizabeth Warren is... But you see, this is how they do things that are detrimental to us, and no one thinks about it. What they're doing right now, and we're fighting it with everything we've got, and I think it's going to work out. But it's just the craziest thing I've ever seen.
The practical pitch, and this is what I want to get at for people that care about the humanitarian disaster at our border, and we could talk more perhaps to conservatives, because I do think that the left very much views migrants as political pawns. Yeah. They want their votes, they want to own them and control them, but they don't actually care about what's happening as these families desperately try to get to someplace safer and more prosperous. But I want to appeal to conservatives who very much think that we should close our border and say, let's look at the conditions that are creating this desperation and lean on these principles we've been talking about for the last hour, which is freedom and entrepreneurship and contract and personal responsibility. That, to me, is the only way to fix this problem in a humane and honest way.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we get this book?
Amazon, as well as MagatteWade.com. And yeah.
Do we get extra prizes if we go to MagatteWade.com?
I am thinking you probably will have something special. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And what else do we need to know? Where do we find you? And is your TED Talk, by the way, has it been resurfaced? Because I know there was all that monkey business with it. Because I tell everybody, if you want full Magatte, you got to watch that TED Talk. I think you scared those people. They'd never heard the truth before, perhaps.
I don't know. And you know what is interesting is because you look at all the TED Talks, and I think it's probably the only TED Talk that talks about this. Yeah. And yet, I'm sure. No, so the TED Talk, I would like for it to go back, to come back to the forefront, and hopefully it will. So I have a main TED Talk, which is called Why It's So Hard to Do Business in Africa. But you can also find a link to it on my website at MagatteWade.com. And I was told to tell people how to write it. MagatteWade.com. That's how you get there. But the thing with, I would like for the TED Talk to come back up, because I really think when people hear it, they're like, wow, it makes sense. I didn't think about it this way, but it totally makes sense. And the other place where you can find me is everywhere on social media. I'm at MagatteW, MagatteW. That's my handle on social media. Yeah. So. And
you did an epic session with Lex Friedman.
Yes, I did. Lex Friedman.
Was it a full 6 hours? God help us.
No. I think ours was maybe 3 hours, something like that, around more or less.
So a quick listen, yeah.
Yeah, it was normally a quick listen. We had really a great time, and that's the thing. There's just so many things to talk about, and another conversation about this, because I have been doing so much more research on this. Just like the same way the West imported the concept of colonialism to Africa, Same thing when it comes to how women have had to take a step back in society, because that's when they came and they said, "Oh, we're gonna civilize you, you poor schmucks." They brought that concept with them. The whole Puritan concept of women in the back, women this, women covered, all that stuff. It was them, not us. So even there, for me, I'm so interested in everything that comes pre-colonial Africa. See, for most people, the story of Africa starts with slavery and then moves on, colonization and to present day. But very few people stop and remember and realize, whoa, no, African people, there was some really interesting stuff going on back then. And when you start looking there, you start to see that, yeah, most Africans were free marketeers. They were free enterprise people. This whole concept of even price control did not exist, or who gets to decide who grows what crop. Not for us. All of this is an import. It's a colonialist import, And it's just fascinating. So as far as I'm concerned, I am telling all my fellow Africans and people who are not African, who care about the world, to really join me on uncovering that past, seeing how it ties to now and the future, because I really believe that Africa is going to leapfrog. Why? Because we have no other choice. The time for catching up is over. We have to leapfrog or disappear.
Thank you.
Welcome. Join the Cheetah generation. That's my thing.
You need T-shirts, by the way.
For Cheetah generation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to get some, but you guys have to help me design it because you guys are good designers.
We would love to do that.
Okay.
Because cheetahs are clearly libertarians. There's no doubt
they really
about that.
are, right? I mean, they're the ultimate libertarians.
Yes.
I like that. This is gonna be fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the conversation, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and also ring the bell for notifications. And if you want to know more about Free the People, go to freethepeople.org.